Hi, people.
Hello.
This is hello. This is Ruben is here. We are making a summary video about the United States and world history in the last 500 years. This is the fourth video. So let's see here. So, we were discussing about the United States, the different states and the political separation of the states, especially when um, this is when the states were in their original forms, in the beginning of the formation of the United States. So, Ruben, go ahead and read the list of the Confederate States, which were the states in the southeastern part of the continent of the New World.
Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Florida, Louisiana, Texas.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Confederate States. And then the territory supporting Confederacy was Arizona. That's um, 12. And then um, an Indian state, or also of split loyalty, was the state above Texas, which is Oklahoma. Slave states that were loyal to the Union, which is the northern part of the newly formed United States. These are 4 states that permitted slavery but didn't join the Confederacy. And they are.
Kentucky, West Virginia, Delaware, and Montana.
And the Union or free states were.
Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maryland.
And Maryland is important because it was the most near to the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. Also, more Union states were.
Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Minnesota, Dakota Territory, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Nevada, Washington Territory, Oregon, and California.
Great job, Ruben. And then a note, in 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was written by President Lincoln, which freed all enslaved people that lived in states, even those seceded from the Union. So, however, this did not affect slave states. The main reason for this was to strengthen the South, and the freed slaves were also allowed to enlist into the Confederate Army. And these different measures were created to ensure that the free people abstained from violence. The next section is a review of some important amendments and laws of civil rights.
In the 1868 14th Amendment, a few years after the Civil War ended, granted voting to African Americans, citizenship, and equal protection of law to persons born in the U.S. did not apply to American Indians.
In 1870, the 15th Amendment ensured voting rights to African Americans.
In 1875 Civil Rights Act, African Americans were granted right to serve on juries. Racial segregation in public places was banned.
And then then in the 1900s, in 1964, another Civil Rights Act outlawed Again, segregation by race in public places and racial discrimination um, in employment. 18
1965 Voting Rights Act prohibited literacy test for voting. The federal government was allowed to register voters.
Okay. Yeah, so prohibiting literacy tests so they weren't as restrictive for those who could vote. And then 1968, in the Civil Rights Act, they outlawed discrimination in the sale or rental of homes. Read the note.
Uh, in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, exhibiting it in Philadelphia at a scientist exposition. Those scientists who saw it called it a marvel in electrical science.
So that was about the invention of the telephone, a major advancement. And then in 1874, Richard Nixon, president, came down from his post because of a thing called the Watergate scandal, which was implicating the government had been covering up crimes committed by various committee and government members, including political harassment, burglary, bribery. And the present Congress session at the time investigated in pursuit of seeking justice the way that the government was working, and due to an increased distrust of leaders and authority, and questionings of the character of American life.
Population of Hispanics in 1990.
Hold on. So that is mostly it. And then as the last note, this is from 1990, an overview of the population as it came to be with as regards with people from the Americas, aka Hispanics. Read the population levels.
Mexican highest 14 million. Puerto Rican 3 million. Cuban 1 million. Other 5 million.
So, yeah, as before, they were not in these great numbers, but after all the immigration and such, all the people from the Americas was in much higher numbers, and most of them came to the United States looking for work, as did all the other immigrants. So, that was our whole review. And we the sections we reviewed were in the last 500 years. So starting with Native Americans coming across the Bering Strait from Asia into North American continent, with then Europeans looking for resources and doing explorations around the world, going to Asia through the tip of Africa, as well as to the New World. So countries such as Spain, France, and England, Netherlands, traveling around looking for conquest and expansion of settlement. Um, so we had pilgrims settling in the early 1600s, and various small European colonies being established throughout the eastern United States, from north to south. And then we had the political setting up of Continental Congress, the Declaration of Independence written, then the Constitution, after the Articles of Confederation. So there were colonies, the North and South, etc. So the government was set up, the amendments were written, and then urbanization, industrialization occurred.